Welcome to 30 Minute Reviews. I am Adam. You ever see something on the internet that is so just patently stupid that you gotta just sit there and take a minute? You have to take a deep breath and why is that something that's even being thought of as an actual thing? I don't know. So, that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about the fake leak that was put out and spread around, saying that Lucasfilm is going to use the multiverse as a concept to decanonize the sequel trilogy. Now, let's start out quite simply and say this is categorically untrue. There's no way this is a real thing that they're actually considering doing. Because number one, by definition, using the multiverse doesn't decanonize anything. Using the multiverse just has the possibility of recanonizing things. You have the possibility of, you can do that. You can make things less important but still canon. With divergent timelines and things like that, but it's not decanonizing anything when you use the multiverse. You're just adding in an alternate series of events. That's Earth 1 and Earth 2. Crisis on Infinite Earths included Kingdom Come, it included, what else? Batman 89, Birds of Prey, the TV show, a version of Bruce Wayne that killed Superman, the DC Extended Universe, all got folded in, and did any of that decanonize Earth 1? No, it didn't. That's not how it works. That's not what decanonization is. So, I think that's problem number one that we have. Is that right there. Number two, we gotta consider the source. The source is a YouTuber named Doomcock. No, that's not made up. That's his actual, channel name. It's called Doomcock. Who's got a very sketchy past with insider sources, so to say. Insider sources is a term that has lost some credibility now. Because, in entertainment at least. Because when someone says they have an insider source, and they're at a trade, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, Entertainment Weekly, it means that someone actually, who works there, verifiably, is actually saying, yeah, this is what we're doing, this is what we have. Which is cool, because then you get some cool insider information that comes out. Now, the issue is, when someone like this, when someone like, we got this covered, Bouting in the Comics, Cosmic Book News, when these sites say they have a, quote, insider source, it means they pulled it out of their ass and they decided that they were going to pass it off as something that's going to happen, and usually something that, based on what's going on in the world at the time, they can say, well, this is what they're doing now, and the industry trend suggests that we're going to continue doing this because the previous ones made money. So what they'll do is they'll scattershot and say a bunch of these are in development. Then when one of them gets put onto the production slate and says this is what's actually happening, then that's, that they say credit for it. They say, oh, look what we called. We had an insider who said this happened. This adds credibility to us. But what they don't take into consideration is the fact that this doesn't actually, prove they have an insider source. It just proves they're good at guessing. Which I know to be fine. Because here's the thing. Last week it was announced that Michael Keaton was going to be coming back to play Batman, to connect in the Batman from Batman 89 into that universe. Back in 2014 or 2015, right after we started the podcast, we talked about a fan theory that was online. There were multiple fan theories about Batman v Superman. One was that the Batman that we had here was actually Slade Wilson. One was that the move when Zack Snyder said the V in Batman v Superman did not mean verse. It meant something else, and in reality it was a Latin phrase that meant to have issue with, like a pretentious asshole. What he said was, what we theorized was that it was Batman 5, and this is the 5th iteration of the Batman that started with Keaton's Batman, because that would help the universe get established, and then we would know which Robin got killed, because that would be, the Robin from Batman and Robin. We know which one it is, and we know who died, and then we have an emotional attachment to it, so that moment has more resonance than just, oh, Robin's dead. And that was the theory we came up with. At no point during that did we say, oh, we have an exclusive from an insider at, Warner Brothers, because that would be ridiculous. We were two college students who, were theorizing based on information that we had at hand. And saying, like, oh, well, Disney's going to do some live-action remakes. Like, yeah, no shit. The other ones all made over $1 billion, with the exception of Aladdin, I think, was just under $1 billion. Like, why wouldn't they? Like, you spend $100 million, you get back $1 billion. 100% do that over and over again until people stop going to see it. So that's the other thing, is like, just say that you're guessing, like, this is what I think is going to happen. Because if you're able to say this is what I think is going to happen, and you're right a good amount of the time, it's going to be just as credible as you saying I have an insider source who's right about half the time. And then everyone ran with the story. Oh, they're going to decanonize sequel trilogy, sequel trilogy. Doomcock, as a person, has always hated the sequel trilogy. If you look at his channel, he never liked The Last Jedi, and that's what it's really all about, is getting rid of The Last Jedi from canon, so that way all these pissy little people who don't understand what a character arc is can have their moment and be like, see, we were right. We got to have people punch things, and we got, like, I feel like that scene of, like, where Luke goes, what do you want me to do? Go and stare down the First Order with a laser sword? I feel like they took that as a personal affront. And so that was the other thing. Number three, the Star Wars world, as it stands now, doesn't have a multiverse. There's no traversing a multiverse in Star Wars. That said, there was no time travel in Star Wars until very recently, when Rebels introduced the concept of time travel to Star Wars. But that doesn't mean that, that doesn't mean you can't add in the multiverse. But adding in the multiverse would feel weird and derivative. Because we're about to get into that in Marvel. DC's going into that. We have the CW, who's been, like, bathing in it for years. It's a lot happening. A lot happening all at once to add in and say, look, this is what we're doing. I just feel like that would be a poor decision on their part to kind of hop onto that bandwagon and try to use it to, fix continuity. Then there was one other thing I wanted to address when it came to this. I don't know. I feel like the books and the extended universe. That's the other thing you really got to think about with this, because you can't just decanonize the movies. Because decanonizing the movies is one thing, but you're decanonizing a lot of other stuff too, because there were also, children's books that are decanonized. The target audience. Like, I hate when people say Star Wars isn't for kids. Star Wars isn't for kids. It's like Rian Johnson made a statement about how George Lucas made a 7-hour movie about how fear can make good people into fascists, and people were like, it's not a kids movie. Like, it's a toy commercial. Like I like Star Wars as much as the next guy, but don't tell me that I'm not sitting down and watching a 2-hour-long toy commercial. That's why there's a new Stormtrooper in every movie. Like, because it can sell you a new toy then. That's why every single iteration of this has something new in a mass. That way they don't have to attach an actor to it and they can just throw it out there and make a toy. Like, the first new character debuted from Empire Strikes Back. After A New Hope, well, Star Wars at the time, was, the first one was Boba Fett. Why? Because you didn't need to have an actor in there yet. You just had to have the suit on display so people could see what the suit looked like, and then be like, I want an action figure of that. That's what it is. When he sold the rights to Star Wars, he retained the merchandising rights from Fox, because he was a good businessman, George Lucas. That's what you can't say it's not designed to sell toys. It's a kid's movie. That's the entire point of it. Because the merchandising is where they make the good money. Now, and the other thing is, it's very hard to say, Star Wars is not for kids in the same breath as, let's look at the toy sales to determine if Star Wars is failing or not. It's like, okay, is it a movie for kids or is it not? Because, I don't go into Walmart. It's like, people, that's the big thing, is everyone's always like, oh, look at Walmart. Walmart doesn't have a big Star Wars section. It's like, Well, I mean, there's no movie coming out for the next 2 years, so it doesn't behoove them to have that there. There's no TV show for specifically aimed at children on Disney XD or anything, so it's not like you can sell Rebels toys or anything like that. I mean, Resistance is a thing, but is it really? And then there's all of that. And I guess the whole situation is so stupid. But with the books in the extended universe, that's the other way they make money, is with all of that. Now, when they when they decanonize that, they got to decanonize Resistance Reborn. They got to decanonize Resistance, the TV show. Galaxy's Edge is set in the sequel trilogy. Are they going to decanonize Galaxy's Edge? And that whole thing, that's the key. That's another key issue here, that's not going to happen. And the final key issue with this is that this is predicated on the fact that this is a civil war within Lucasfilm between Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, which is a very thinly veiled man versus woman fight that's happening. To illustrate, the good guys are both guys, and the bad person is a woman. It's very thinly veiled misogyny. Now, let's talk about that, because part of the genesis of this rumor came from another report. I forgot who it was that said it. I don't know if it was also Doomcock or some other weirdly named YouTuber who said that he was friends with someone who was friends with Jon Favreau, and Jon Favreau saw The Last Jedi, so he went to Kathleen Kennedy and pitched, and pitched The Mandalorian to try and ride the ship because he knew how to fix Star Wars. And Dave Filoni went along with him because Dave Filoni thought it was also a complete failure and hated it as well. Both of those things are categorically incorrect, because number one, according to sources, that these are all readily available online, by the way. This isn't me saying I have a source. You can find this online. Jon Favreau pitched the idea of The Mandalorian in July of 2017. Is when he pitched the idea. The Last Jedi came out in December of 2017. So he saw a movie 6 months before release, decided he hated it, and this is a director, mind you, who would have seen the movie and realized, well, it's a rough cut. He would have seen that movie, said he hated it, and then pitched his own show. Came up with a show idea and pitched it, which means he would have had to have seen the movie. Let's give it a month to develop a premise and everything. Not scripts and all that, but a premise, a Bible, characters, all that good shit. We'll give you a month. We'll say you have a month to develop all that. So let's say he saw the movie in May or June of 2017. And then the movie comes out in December. That's not likely to have happened. I'm not saying it didn't outright, because I can't say that, as someone who is as involved with the Walt Disney Company as Jon Favreau is, I'm not saying it's unlikely that he saw The Last Jedi early. I am saying it's incredibly unlikely that he saw it that early and then hated it so much, realized it was irreconcilable at that point, and then decided to pitch his own TV show to right the ship. I feel like that's incredibly unlikely. Had the timeline matched up, I'd be like, okay, maybe, but the timeline does not match up at all. And then on top of it, Dave Filoni being on board with this idea to use the multiverse to rewrite Star Wars doesn't feel like Dave Filoni. If you watch the Mandalorian TV show, not the TV show like that, the Disney Gallery, where they talk about, story and character and all of that, he's kind of a purist about the Force. And that's why, when I see the end of The Last Jedi, where Luke is facing down with Kylo Ren, the Force projection, Luke's facing down with Kylo Ren, and he's using non-violence to stall so they can escape, that is the ultimate of what the Jedi should be, the Jedi in its purest form. When he says the Jedi should end, he's right, because the Jedi of the Republic has ended, and it no longer exists. He is the Jedi from before that point. He's doing what the Jedi should do. They're peacekeepers, non-violent peacekeepers. They're religious monks, and that's what he's doing when he non-violently stops that. And that thought process is related in Dave Filoni's interpretation of The Phantom Menace, where the fight for Anakin's soul is lost in that moment. Where Qui-Gon sees Anakin as not a weapon. He's a human. He wants to make sure that he'll be treated right. And then Obi-Wan, is training him because it's his job and it was his master's last wish. It's a very different, it's a different interpretation from what you would traditionally see from anyone who hates The Last Jedi. So it's an interesting concept. It's interesting to see them say that, Filoni would do that. And then Filoni also talking about how, characters like Luke and like Frodo and all of that, they don't go on and continue their adventures after. They're, they do their best, but, what happened to them sticks with them. They're not, it's something that stays with them. It's not something that's done, and they can just move past. So let's wrap up there for today. We have a regular episode tomorrow as normal. But a lot of situations, like, I know people are people who hated The Last Jedi are desperate for any information indicating that the Last be decanonized. And I don't exactly understand why that is. It's not a bad, like, if you look at the reviews, go back and look at the review. And the thing is, too, I want everyone to take a minute, when they get a chance, go back and look at the reviews for The Last Jedi from these ultra-right-wing entertainment sources. We Got This Covered tends to lean a little bit to the right because they realize that they can bait for clicks and talk about how much they hate Brie Larson and, all that. They can bait for clicks using that. They realize that. Look at their review for The Last Jedi from when it came out. Glowing. 4.5 out of 5. Phenomenal review. Look at the review for The Last Jedi from Bounding in the Comics. Bounding in the Comics, another ultra right wing news source, or entertainment news source, entertainment news editorializer. I'm trying to get the Bounding in the Comics gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Bounding in the Comics. Cosmic Book News, which is probably the farthest to the right of any news source. It's run by some alt-right blogger, and it's the farthest to the right, I think, of any of them. Maybe Geeks and Gamers is worse, but this is one of the worst. They did the most stupid review point system to warrant giving it a bad score, because basically the review was, the movie looks phenomenal, visually phenomenal, cinematography fantastic, production design, sound mixing, the soundtrack, everything about this movie is great. I don't like what they did to Luke Skywalker. That's literally what they did, is they tanked their review score by breaking the review score down until out of 50-something points, and gave it no points for the entire story catalog because they didn't like what they did to Luke Skywalker. But he couldn't say, oh, the movie's bad. He just, he said, that. And it's this happened toward the beginning. Then there was kind of this coordinated effort to, figure out what they could and couldn't get away with criticizing. The criticisms of Admiral Holdo were quickly dismissed as just misogyny. And then what they did was they started figuring out what they could and couldn't get away with to say they didn't like about the movie. And then they figured we can say that we don't like what they did with Luke because of what they did in the extended universe. And if you look at I keep on mixing up expanded universe and extended universe between DC and Star Wars, which word is which. We can look back and we can say, oh, so this is what we think should happen with Luke. This is what happened with him when other writers handle him. This is not what my headcanon was for what I thought was going to happen. It doesn't match up with my illusion of what this character is. So I think that's ultimately what ended up happening. Was the criticisms that happened were coordinated after the fact. Not necessarily coordinated, but people realized what they could and couldn't get away with. Then some big-name YouTubers did it, some big-name entertainment sites did it, and then they went from there. everyone picked up on it and started doing the same thing because they're baiting for clicks. And that's what we'll wrap up for today. And we'll be back tomorrow we got 3022, science fiction movie from last year, and we have, I wasn't doing Neon Genesis Evangelion, but I only got through 2 episodes. I did watch The Boys, though, so we'll be talking about that. And we'll be back with all of that tomorrow. Until then, have a great rest of your day.